When we're talking about mosaics, we have to go way back in time. Everybody probably knows that mosaics were a very Roman thing. Romans, that's about 2,000 years ago, quite a long time. But we have to go back even further. So look at our timeline. We've got, here we go. We can start on this timeline with Normans. As you can see, that's quite a long time ago. And we go back before them, the Saxons. So you've got Harold, Battle 1066. Then we've got our Romans, who we think about when we think about mosaics. But actually, this story, we have to go back. Iron Age, the Celtic people, no, we go back even further before then. We go back to the Bronze Age. Because during the Bronze Age, in the Mediterranean, the Greeks were doing things a little bit like mosaics, and they had these ideas that the Romans then took on later on. So the Greeks had their ideas around about here, and then the Romans here took the Greeks' idea and made it even better. What were the Greeks doing? I shall show you. The Greeks were using what they had, and what they had in the Mediterranean were a lot of pebbles. I've just taken these from outside, they're a bit grubby. I'm sure that they would look for really nice pebble. That's quite a nice pebble, good smooth shape. Why am I saying that's a good smooth shape? Because most of our mosaics go on the floor. So if you can imagine, I'll find a bad stone. Imagine standing on that. If that's being set into your floor, that's going to hurt. So what did they do? Well, very much like you'd imagine, they got all their colours. So we've got a brown there and a brown there. And I've got a nice green piece of paper here. But what they do is get something soft for it to push into, like sand or sticky mud. I'm not using the word concrete at the moment, am I? I'm not using that yet. I'm still talking about sticky mud and sand. And they'd lay them out in lines and patterns. As I say, I've only got these stones today, so I can't really start doing something amazing. Maybe you could, if you live near somewhere where there's lots of stones, or you're lucky to get a trip to the beach or something, maybe you could think about that. But you get some white ones. So look, I've got brown ones against white ones. You can see it's beginning, some kind of pattern's beginning to happen a little bit. It's not very good. It's a little bit of rubbish. Okay, I admit that. But you get the idea. And then another line. And so this is what the Greeks were doing before the Romans. They were finding all their favourite pebbles, better than mine, because we've agreed my pebbles are not so good. And they were starting to make pictures in the floor, and then you would fill in all the gaps with some sticky mud, with some sand, and then you could walk on these. But it's not ideal because all the stones, a little bit funny shapes, or if you were lucky to get pebbles, all the pebbles are round, so all your pictures were made of round things. So this is where the Romans looked at these and thought, we can do better. So our clever Romans had a look at what the Greeks were doing with pebbles and thought we can do better than that, and we want our pictures to look a little bit more like the animals or the people or the shapes that we want. How are we going to do that? They decided that instead of having roundy pebbles, they wanted squares. Now I have, these are real, it says on the real Roman tesserae. These have been found in the ground, not stuck to a picture anymore, so they've been rescued. And I'm going to be very careful because these are real Romans, so how old are they, roughly? 2,000 years old, so I'm handling this very, very carefully. So the Romans made their tiles. They made, some of these are stone, so they cut them into squares. This one's a nice white, some kind of white stone. But they also made bricks and tiles. This is so this was made out of wet clay, and it's pushed into its shape, and then they put it in an oven in a kiln, and they baked it, and then they would cut it into squares like that. So already we've got white and red, two of the very popular colours. Lots of white there. So you can see there's a bit more natural stone that they've cut. So that's a piece of stone that's found in the ground. It's quite flat. And what they've done, they've started to cut it into squares, or the right shape that they wanted for their picture. And also you've got smaller ones. So for example, for the body of a person, you could have the person's wearing a white top, so you can have lots of big white squares. But when you get to the face, you might want to do finer detail. You might want to do, big pink cheeks. So you can do big pink cheeks on the person. But then they've got eyebrows. So you might want to do little eyebrows like that with a smaller stone. So that's how the Roman stones are even better. Now then, I'm putting this on my green paper. But another clever thing that the Romans came up with, which was very, very clever, sounds very simple, but for the first time ever, concrete. They worked out how to mix sand and stones, sometimes very big stones as well, big lumps of stone, but sand and stones and lime, And sometimes, if it was available, they would use the ash from volcanoes. Obviously, they didn't do that in Britain because I can't really think of any volcanoes in Britain. But there's some famous volcanoes in Italy where the Romans came from. Can you think? Yeah. They mixed the lime and the sand and a little bit of water, mixed it all together, and it became concrete, or sometimes it's called mortar. And so, where all my green is, we cover that in the wet, sticky mortar. I'm sure you've seen builders doing this, or builders on television doing it. And then they work out their design. Sometimes they would scratch the design. Let's move these stones out of the way. Sometimes they would scratch the design into the mortar. I'm using the wrong end of the pencil to scratch there. Or sometimes they would if they're going to do a long line, get a piece of string and pull the string out nice and tight, so that you could follow the long straight line. Or sometimes they would draw it out so it makes a mark. Let's have a go with... So I'm doing the heart. Now, the heart was also another Roman kind of invention, although of course every animal has a heart, but the picture of the heart meaning love or romance was kind of a Roman thing. Now, I've done a little bit of reading about this because I thought, who started that? And apparently it's because there was a herb, a plant, and it grew on the North Africa coast, and it was called, let me check my notes, silphium. This plant called silphium, and it's a relative of fennel, which is a plant that we still have today. And they loved using it as a food flavouring. They were trying to say that, loved it as a food flavouring, and it had. They thought that it had romantic qualities that could make you fall in love. So this plant called silphium. Now, the thing about silphium is it had little seed cases, and guess what shape the seed cases were? Yeah, it's heart shaped. So that's where we think the heart shape symbol came from. So anyway, back to what we're doing. Let's have. I've got my different colours here. This is basically what the Romans would do. That okay, so Roman boss would think, she or he would think, right, let's start doing the outside. So we've covered all this in our wet concrete, our wet mortar, and we're pushing these into it. And then that goes around, so you're getting the idea now. That goes around the outside, like that. And then when we're done, let's have I'm not going to finish all of it because you don't want to watch me doing this. I'm sure you're now thinking, I could do this at home with something else. So all these, they're all lumpy bumpy, but because I'm pushing them into wet mortar, they're all the top of them is all going to be flat. So when I walk across there with my bare feet, because I'm a posh Roman, I won't get all these sticking into my feet. And then, can you see we've got the gaps in between? Well, you fill the gaps with more of this mortar stuff, this wet cement, and this by filling the gaps, you're calling it grouting. It's a funny old word, grouting, because the stuff that goes in between the gaps is called grout. People who tile your kitchen or tile your bathroom, they use grouts today in between. And then the very last thing, nice wet sponge, and you wipe across so that you haven't got any concrete on top of your stones, so they're all nice and clean. So the white ones are very shiny white, the red ones are shiny. They used the colours. They used black and blue quite a lot, and red and white and yellow. Those are the main colours that they liked. Obviously not green, because trying to find a green stone, well, it's quite tricky. But so our main colours for a mosaic would be black and blue and red and white and yellow. Those are the favourite colours. And as I say, so the bigger stones for the bigger details, and then when you've got finer details, let's put the centre to the heart. Get the little ones that go right in the middle. There you go. So I'm sure this is giving you lots of ideas about how you could do some kind of mosaic at home. But that's how the Romans did it. Right, I'm going to do a very quick make-at-home mosaic. I'm going to use old newspaper. I've already drawn out the shape, the heart shape which we talked about earlier, and I've got newspaper and it's absolutely full of colour. I can see they're blue, I can see they're red. You can guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to start pulling the newspaper apart. So check, has everybody read the newspaper? Are we happy to rip up the newspaper? Yes, good, okay. So I will start pulling it apart. So I fast forward this bit so that you don't have to listen to me talking for ages. Just like ready and fast forward. So there's some colours already. Colours there, let's see what we can do with these. So I've got my colours and now cut them into squares. Now I need to start sticking. Idea in my mind first. Remember we saw the lines of different colours, so I'm going to start. Got my glue here. This is my Roman mortar. My glue here. Start sticking. I'm going to go for white around the outside. So start there, sticking into my concrete, which is my Pritt stick. And away we go. A bit of this. Would you like me to speed this one up as well, so you can see me do it quickly? And have some little gaps. So what the Romans would do, is what I'm going to do, they would cut their tiles so they fit in. There's a gap there, I'm going to cut my tile. They would have some kind of a tile cutter. Maybe hit it hard with a hammer to break it into a smaller tile. I've just got a pair of scissors, which makes it a lot easier. There you go, fill in my gap there. So that's what you could do. You could cut your tiles a little bit smaller just to fit into the gaps. All the red done, and I've got some blue, so I might add some blue I think. There you go, there's my blue. So I've got all this space around the outside. What the Romans would do, they wouldn't leave a space like that. They'd normally put some kind of border on it. So that would be, you can see here, some kind of twisty border like that maybe. And then we'll double that up so you can fill that with stones. And then they did straight lines as well. And that could go all the way around the outside, all the way around the outside of our pattern. Around the top, you can't see, just dump the glue over, and around there, around there, around there. And then, oh, there you go, get that in the camera. And continue the wiggle, like that wiggles. So, yeah, we've got hearts in the middle and we put a frame around the outside. I feel like that would keep me busy for the afternoon, but as you know, I've got to finish making this film so you can see it. So I shan't finish this one, but you can imagine, wow, all these colours, you can start in the middle and they spread out and they go all the way around the outside, nice trim. A line there and then a wiggly line in the middle, and you think, that leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. I could put something in there, some kind of roundy thing maybe, or a smiley, something, I don't know. Something in each of the corners, so that's going to keep me busy for the afternoon. And it kind of tells us, even just by using scissors, glue, paper, how long it would take for the Romans to make their tiles, to make their mosaic floors. I use the word tiles because, here's an interesting sneaky fact, when we look at a lot of the great big floor coverings, we think that they would have been on their knees, hands and knees, and they've been sticking everything in actually on that floor, in that room, on that floor. Quite often, where it's a great big room, they'd actually be working in a workshop somewhere else, and just like we have today, they'd be making a section, probably about a metre by half a metre, so 1 metre long and then half a metre wide. They'd be making a section, and that section is like a piece of a jigsaw. It fits in with all the other ones, and they know exactly how big the room is. So these clever mosaic makers are working in their workshops, making 1 metre by half metre sections, and then they transport them to the villa, the Roman villa, where they're needed, and then all the sections are stuck together on the floor in the room, in the right room, and they all work as one big design. So you've got small tesserae that go together to make pictures. The pictures go inside the great big tiles, and then the great big tiles all join together to make an even bigger picture. These Romans are very clever and very arty.